Well, there it is, folks. Been a long time since we talked about the Honda in a video, but Bizarre Furhead and I, the Keykeeper, did not have any interest in working on this, and after Bizarre Furhead and our dad and myself all conquered it, I think maybe we began to understand why. This is a very, very cramped engine compartment to work in, and there's just so many little pieces and vacuum lines and things like that, stuff that's very difficult to remove. Oh, I'm not going to say that I don't like Japanese cars, but my opinion of them has changed a little bit after working on this one. What we found, we got a lot of crap in here. We'll clean some of this stuff up. When the timing on the little motor slipped, the number 2 cylinder, I believe that's the number 2 cylinder, is where the valve struck the piston when the timing slipped on the little engine. It did a little bit of damage to the piston, but not anything too bad. The valve is bent. The valve will have to be replaced. The head looks pretty good. The head gasket was in good shape. But the one thing we've kind of been wondering about, here's the intake, and the intake was a real booger to get off of this car because most of the work my dad had to do from underneath, while Bizarre Furhead and I helped out up top. As you can see, you've got these numerous intake areas, and somewhere around here, what did I do with that thing? Oh gosh, now I lost it. Nope, it's right here. This little unit, whose function I'm not quite clear on, this little unit sits above those intake areas and has these little vacuum actuated diaphragms in them. Well, as you can see, one of them is very clearly missing, and they were all loose. Now the one that's missing actually belongs to this cylinder's intake area, and it had completely fallen out, but guess where we found it? We did not find it in this hole, and these holes are separated from one another. There's not a way to get from one to the other than to go up and over. We found this little plate, this butterfly, down in there. And I mean, it was way down in there. It was so far down in there that I had to actually bend it in half to get it to come back out because there just wasn't enough clearance. But there's 2 screws that hold this in. We found one of the screws way down here in this place. We never did find the other one. But what we're wondering is if it would have been at all plausible for that screw to end up in the number 2 cylinder and to jam the valve when it tried to exhaust it, to snag the intake, I believe it's the intake valve that's bent, to snag the intake valve, to cause the camshaft to bind up a little bit, and to cause the little motor to jump out of time just a little tiny bit. Seems kind of far-fetched, but the timing belt is really not in that bad a shape on this car. It was getting time to do it, but we weren't past time to do it. Anyway, now the thing that remains to be seen is whether or not we're going to put the little motor back together and get the little car going again. Doesn't look like the little motor is very seriously damaged, but it was a job to take it apart. I mean, we probably spent I know we spent at least 3 days. One of those was a whole afternoon, and the rest were part-time days working on this silly car to get it going again. Or at least to get it apart and find out why it failed, not to get it going again, because we haven't done that yet. But all the gaskets are in reasonably good shape. The head came off it was kind of difficult to remove the head, and amazingly, although we have removed a ton of studs and bolts and things like that, the only one we twisted off was on the EGR valve. We only twisted one of them off. Don't know what kind of miracle we can attribute that to, but I'd call it amazing nonetheless. Anyway, over the coming couple of weeks, we're going to see whether or not, it's feasible to get a new valve, if it's worthwhile to have the valve put in there. We may even put it in ourselves because quotes on having the head machined have all come back very expensive. So maybe if any of you know of a good place to have a head machined in Illinois that doesn't cost a fortune, even if it's not particularly near to our location, I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, that's the story about the Honda so far and what we've done with it to date.